Hello, I'm Bible Hicks of the Boy in the Bible Man. When you hear the boy in his Bible, it reminds me of when I first started reading the Bible, which was around 15 and a half years of age. I was an errand boy at the time, the lowest job in the retail industry, taking groceries round to different people's houses. I left school unable to read, write, or speak correctly. I was tongue-tied and I was dyslexic, and I'm afraid I came from a very difficult background. At the age of 15, I had an operation. With this operation, the good surgeon told me to copy out a big book, putting the emphasis on the word big, which he mentioned twice, a big book. And he said, you'll find the words slowly popping into your mind, and that's exactly what did happen. I was there to have the tongue operation, and he had a lot of students around him, and he wanted me to read wanted me to quote the letters of the alphabet. I didn't even know the letters of the alphabet. I think I got to D, and after that he needed to help me out. When I eventually found a book, which was the same day, I looked everywhere, I couldn't find a book anywhere, but I found an old book with around about 1,430 pages. It was, of course, the Bible, and it was a 1611 Bible, and the typesetting was about 100 years old even then, in 1956, which is the year. But I was fortunate enough to get a real large pile of computer sheets that had printed one side but blank the other. And I'd learned to write slowly from that Bible. And in these discussions and talks on the Bible, we're going to try and recapture some of those first impressions that came to me. And I ended up writing a book about those first impressions in a book on theology called Bible Truth. And if you haven't seen Bible Truth, it contains the teaching that I discovered from the Bible at that time. Of course, an adult person was writing, but much of the teaching comes back from those early days. The first thing I think I realized when I was writing the Bible and copying it out by hand, Genesis, then later on Exodus and Matthew to fill out the New Testament at the same time, was that there was an unseen author that was standing behind the words that I was reading. It would take some time, of course, for me to have an identity of that divine author that was working, but there definitely was an impact on my own life that was affecting me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and eventually it would affect my entire life that was to come, and that was some 67 years ago. So for 67 years, the time I'm doing this record, this book has been impacting on my life. I found it impacting so much that I found I couldn't stop writing it and writing it and writing it until I think I finished the writing of the Bible around about 2 years later. But I'd done a lot of the New Testament, obviously more than once, because I was writing one chapter of the New Testament to one chapter of the Old Testament. And God was the divine author. Did I realize it? No, not straight away. It took time. But when it did, I began to realize there was something quite extraordinary. There's a strength in the Bible that's like no other book in the world, because it is inspired of God. God is responsible for the Bible. It's the oldest book or collection of books in the world, I'm told. Maybe that needs to be checked out by some historians of different languages, but I believe it is to be the oldest book in the world. Definitely the oldest collection of books in the world. And God was speaking to me, and that was wonderful. Of course, I recognized the diversity of the human writers, all kinds of people, some clever people. Moses was a clever man, and some people were not so clever. Some people just looked after sheep or whatever, and herdsmen. And you've got all this wide variety of people writing from different ages. In the Old Testament, we have to cover maybe something like at least 1,500 years from the days of Abraham to our New Testament, maybe 2,000 years from the days of Abraham to our New Testament. And there were records that go on long before those 2,000 years. If you're going back to the time of the flood and the time of Tower of Babel and the time, all those events that took place, the story of man in a garden and being tempted and falling into temptation, etc., that goes back even further than Abraham. Moses may well have been the first writer that we can identify in the contribution, but there were scores of people, 40 I think at least, amount of people who contributed to our New Testament. In the Old Testament, the inspiration of the Old Testament covered history and covered culture and covered nations. The centre of these nations was the children of Israel. In the New Testament, it's compacted down to maybe around 60, 70 years, if you take the life of Jesus, his public ministry, and the end of the New Testament. If you take the entire life of Jesus, then of course you're looking at 100 years of records that are there to us. Beside the identity of the divine author and the diversity of the human authors, you also have got the unity of its many themes. What do I mean by that? Well, I found that some of the items I was picking up in Genesis, the themes were continuing. The battle between good and evil, which starts off in Genesis, is all the way through the Bible. But it's also symbolisms. You had the symbol of the water of life flowing from the Garden of Eden to cover the land. And constantly in the Bible, as I'd read it, the idea of water became a symbol for life and energy and freshness and renewal. And the soul having a thirst for God himself, wanting the water of life, spiritually, so to speak. But there was other images as well. There was the light of the world you find starts at the very beginning of the Bible. You find the Spirit of the living God being everywhere at the very beginning of the Bible. You find that the rich symbolisms that you find concerning sacrifice and the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus dying on the cross, you find that covering thousands of years. It's amazing of the many themes. But if you wanted to boil down the essential themes, it's the struggle between heaven and earth, between spiritual and natural. And there is this struggle all the way through, the God wanting to break into human life, into human souls, into human spirit. And he didn't just want to say, I love you. He wanted to say, I want to help you. I want to be your friend. And that comes up throughout the Bible, the many themes that are coming. And there is a unity. What we mean by unity, that nowhere in Genesis does it contradict anything in the Bible that goes all the way through the Bible till you come to the last book. Indeed, if you was to take Genesis and make a note of the items in Genesis, the early chapters, and make a note of the items at the very last book in the Bible, you say, this is the same author. Well, of course it's the same author, that's God, but it's also many authors, the diversity, and then the unity of its many themes. There are two other points that's worth noticing that's here, and which I've placed in the book. It's the authority of its inspired truth. What do we mean by that? We mean that when we have inspiration, if God is saying something, it has within it an authority. It's the authority of the Bible that has protected the church from error again and again and again and again. Because we as humans are quite happy to go along thinking our own thoughts. And to have the inspired truth guiding us and directing us, that's part of the inspiration. We also need to understand the reality of its moral impact. You take the blessings of God. The blessings of God is tied up with stewardship of the earth, of soil, of plants, of trees, of animals, birds, of fish, Stewardship. And if you are a farmer and you were blessed, your land was blessed to be a blessing to others. And in the Bible, you have this truth coming through to you all the time, that there is the blessing of God spiritually, and that has its moral impact in your life. So inspiration, what is inspiration? Well, you'll hear it said many times, it's the breathing of God into the soul of man. What does he use to breathe his thoughts, his ideas into the soul of man? Revelation. The inspired truth conveyed to your mind, your heart, and to your spirit, and to mine. Inspiration is not something to be afraid of. It's something to be embraced. To feel the warmth of God breathing into your soul, words and ideas, thoughts and symbols and riches, and to feel them like I have for 67 years now. And every day I get something from the Bible. Every day. Now, I didn't always see it 50, 60, 70 years ago, but I see it more now. And I become a person who appreciates that it's God speaking. And I appreciate the diversity of the human writers, but I also feel its moral impact in my life. So there's 5 things. Let me give you the headings. 1, the identity of the divine author. 2, the diversity of the human writers. 3, the unity of its many, many themes. 4, the inspiration and authority of its inspired truth. And 5thly, the impact of its moral teaching. Be inspired by the inspired book. Thank you.